Good morning and welcome to Emerson Institute at City of Light. I'm Reverend Dr. Paul Gretz, and it's a delight to have you with us today. We hope that you are all settled in and ready for an exciting class on Musar. Everyday Holiness is the textbook, and it is the Jewish spiritual pathway of Musar from the Musar Institute. We are in class number 6, and we're going to be looking at chapters 20, 21, 22, and 23 today. So let's just prepare our hearts for all that we have to embrace today. And the Spirit of God is ready to speak to us and just enrich our lives. So let's just do so in preparation by just taking some deep breaths. We're going to allow a cleansing breath to just kind of bring in fresh air and release out all stress, distraction, and tension from the day. So join me. We're going to take 3 deep breaths, breathing in through our nose, holding for a moment, and then breathing out through our mouth. Would you join with me? Let's do this together. Breathe in and release. Deep breath in and release. Deep breath in and release. Now, in a moment of silence, let's set our intention, whispering our desire of that which we really want to see transpire within our life during this time that we're sharing together. So just give it a name. Name it. And so it is. Thank you so much. Well, I hope you are all ready for today's class. You've got a pen, paper, and maybe a cup of coffee. And how about a cup from the Emerson Institute? For all of our students, we'd like to remind you that there are great opportunities for you to support the Emerson Institute and the work it does by purchasing some of the Emerson products. Now, you can find them at our store online, Positive Outlook. If you go there, Positive Outlet, is the name of the store. And if you go there, you'll find all the information you need. There are mugs, there are cups, there are shirts and blouses, t-shirts and sweatshirts and hoodies, etc. All kinds of opportunities for you to support the Emerson Institute and show your school pride. So make sure you check out Positive Outlet, and you can get one of these fine mugs, a travel mug like I have, and enjoy coffee supporting the Emerson Institute as you are part of each and every class session. So let's take a look at class number 6. What is Musar? As we begin, let's just take a moment to review. Musar is this ancient spiritual pathway dating far back as the Babylonian era. It is a pathway of spiritual ethics, of learning how to hone the craft of being a person of excellence, a light of brilliance in this world. It is this wonderful spiritual pathway that calls us to look into our soul and find those areas that we need to work on, to improve. And over the course, we're looking at various different aspects of our life that we can work on, and we're going to create our own individual curriculum. At the end of this class, we're going to take a listing of all these things and really set forth a curriculum of area. What do we really need to work on the most to become the child of God that we're really called to be? So we've been looking at humility, patience, gratitude, compassion, order, equanimity, honor, simplicity, enthusiasm, silence, generosity, truth, and moderation. So are you beginning to form that curriculum? If you've been with us over these few classes, we've looked at all these different aspects that enable us to be the mensch, as it's called forth in Hebrew, the person of good quality, the person of excellence, the person who has great values that are lived out in this world today. So today we're beginning to look at some other aspects, and we're going to look at loving kindness first. So we're going to that chapter number 20 on loving kindness. I hope you've had a chance to review it in our textbook because there's all kinds of exciting insights. But let's look at a few of the highlights. Today's chapter is all about the Hebrew word chesed. Chesed means that an attribute of grace, benevolence, or compassion. It's referencing loving kindness. Now, this very word is based on the passage from Micah chapter 6, verse 8 that we find in the Old Testament. It says, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love, loving kindness, and walk humbly with God. So this is the aspect of what we're really required to do in this world, but that is to live in a world where we have created an atmosphere of justice and fairness and equality for all, and doing so with such loving kindness and an effort of just really expressing the sense of inclusion, the sense of equality in all these ways, and doing it with a sense of humility as well, as we walk in this spiritual pathway, not in arrogance, but in sense of a humbleness of knowing who we are as the child of God. Now, in the Jewish tradition, the tradition of Jesus, who is our great example, we find that the deeds of loving kindness are elevated to the highest possible rank among soul traits. So if we're really wanting to express the divine, loving kindness is one of the great traits that we need to embody within our life. Now, loving kindness is more than just being a nice person. Because a lot of people will say, well, you know what, I'm nice at times, and I'm very fair or compassionate at moments, and I'm not a bad person. But it's just even more than just being a nice person. For this Hebrew word chesed really is one of the primary attributes of the divine. Loving kindness is one of the primary attributes of God. And we're created in God's image. So this attribute and this essence of loving kindness is really within us. We just need to release it to its fullest extent. We need to allow it to rise forward. We need to exercise it. We need to practice it. We need to allow it to be expressed in our day-to-day journey. Psalm chapter 89, verse 2 says, "For I have said, loving kindness will be built up forever. In the heavens, you will establish your faithfulness." In essence, what it's saying is that the world is going to be built by this loving kindness. Loving kindness will be building up all kinds of things, building up one another, building up the world around us, building the communities that we live in, building a world that works for everyone, not just a few. So it's really important that we start to embrace loving kindness to the full extent by understanding what it is. Because loving kindness involves acts that actually sustain one another. Support, build up, encourage, building one another and help to sustain in this world the community around us. Loving kindness is meant to be expressed with a generosity that is expressed without expectation of any kind of return, or even any kind of gratitude being offered to us. So when we are exercising loving kindness to the fullest, it needs to be our everyday nature. And we're not doing it in terms of, I'm going to do this nice thing because I hope that they'll say thank you. Or I'm going to do this really kind thing and be very generous in my concern and compassion and care for one another. I'm going to do it because I'm having an expectation that they'll do something back for me. I'm going to tell you this, when we have offered any kind of spiritual trait with an expectation attached to it, of some sort of outcome coming for us, that we are sort of acting in a sense of greed or desire for greed or desire for acclamation, a desire for all these kind of things, then we're doing it in the wrong context. We're doing it in the wrong purpose. We're doing it for a self-centeredness rather than a total commitment to the spirit of generosity. It's like people who say, I really want to give a gift to a charity, but I really want my name expressed across the gift. I really want everyone to know how charitable I am. I want everybody to know the gifts that I share. So there's more of an agenda behind the giving. The giving isn't about blessing the charity as much as it is about bring a highlight to who you are and your wealth and your prosperity. So what we want to be careful is that, are we doing these things with an agenda attached that's all about our own personal ego and trying to elevate us, meeting needs of our pride, meeting needs of our ego, meeting needs or even of greed, that we're expressing something back. Now let's bring balance, because I just said we need to do things without expectancy, but at the same time, are we not called to live in expectancy? So it's living in expectancy of the all good. It's not doing the acts of good with expectancy of something coming back to our ego. Does that make sense? So there's difference. So I'm expecting God, the divine power, to provide and to do amazing things. I have a great power of expectation that as I move forward in humility, as I move forward in honor and integrity, as I move forward in grace, as I move forward in all these characteristics, I'm expecting and knowing that God is working through me, in me, around me. It's that kind of wonderful expectation. Then there's an expectation that says, I am expecting something that's going to meet my ego. So I'm expecting, it's like, you're going to say, wow, that was really great. Or, look at you. And yes, exactly. Look at how fabulous I am because I gave this gift or I did this. And I did it for the purpose and the intention of elevating myself and a self-centeredness. I'm giving something that, I want my name attached to it for my own personal fame. These kind of agendas behind things diminish the power of the gift, because all gifts are given and meant to be given without any expectation of return. That's a real generosity. Everything we do should be done with the pure intention. I'm doing this, and I don't care if you ever acknowledge me. I'm doing this because I don't care if I ever get anything in return. I'm doing this, I don't care if anybody even knows that I did it, because I'm doing it out of the pure essence of a desire to make the world a better place. So I'm doing acts of loving kindness, not so that everyone will say, wow, look at how fabulous Paul is. Look at how fabulous he is. But no, I'm doing it for the intention that it doesn't matter if anybody ever even knows I did it, or anybody even ever acknowledges I did it. I would still do it over and over again. That's the true essence of the generosity of giving in any shape or form. And
so you've covered all bases except one that's in my mind, and that is, suppose it's your birthday and I give you a shirt, and you open it and you say, I don't need this, I don't like it, take it back. That's going to crush my ego, whether my ego is involved or not, because it's birthday, and
I love your illustration. My birthday is March the 5th, and I'm a size medium, and I like something blue. So,
okay.
Just kidding. But whatever your question about, if you gave a gift and it's, say, my birthday, and then I speak in ways to say, thank you, but I don't really need this. I don't want it. I don't care for it. What the problem is then not with you, it's with me, because I didn't exercise the act of receiving with an open heart. And let me tell you this, the act of receiving and the words that you share when you receive something need to be filled with a sense of integrity and honor, that we say things that are not harmful to someone else. So the approach, but on the incredible energy that Anne remembered my birthday, March the 5th. Anne rest of you students, get your pen and paper out. Just kidding. But a beautiful illustration that it's about learning to give and to receive. And we've talked about this previously, and even on last Sunday in our celebration service, the importance of understanding how to receive well, how to receive from others, and to be very open to receiving, and to take things and to receive things that are given in the spirit that they're given. And not so much looking at, well, I don't need this, but wow, I do need the thoughtfulness that came from Anne, who remembered my birthday. I need that, so I appreciate that, and I receive that with great gratitude. So hopefully no one is hurting your ego by responding in ways of being a poor receiver, but learning to receive well. I can't emphasize this enough. If you learn how to receive, you'll always be in abundance. Now, I've received things that here. I can share with, oh, you know what? I know that my friend down the street could use this, or someone else could use it. And I share it at different times. It doesn't always have to be Christmas. It doesn't always have to be a birthday, but just being generous and sharing with others. If there's something you can't use, receive it in the very energy that it was given of love and kindness. Receive it with great gratitude. If you can't use it, set aside and know that it's been a gift, and you have the right to give it to someone else if you so desire, because it was given. It wasn't loaned. It wasn't a gift that's truly given, is given with no attachments. So it's given for you to do with whatever. So that's the beauty of learning how to really, and that goes to our next point, is we are givers and receivers in life. So what we know that is practicing loving kindness means being a giver that goes beyond the boundaries that are comfortable for us. When we're really living in the spirit of loving kindness, then we're able to stretch ourselves even to be generous in ways of acts, of deeds and words that maybe even stretch us beyond our boundaries. Because we want of kindness for somebody else, something kind and simple. Let me tell you this, certainly when you are shopping at the grocery store and maybe there's an elderly person who's taken their buggy out all the way to their car, and then, it's a little bit of a trek for them to return that buggy even to a cart storage area. You might just say, oh, let me get that for you. Something simple that you could do that's a kindness for somebody else. I'll put that cart away for you. There's all kinds of simple things that we can do in life that are deeds that just enhance this spirit of loving kindness. So we can be givers, but we must learn how to be receivers in the right context. And being a receiver is one who is receiving with gratitude, but not expectation, as in a taker. A taker says, I'll take that, and I'm looking for that, and I'm going to take this and that, and I have this great expectation, like, you kind of owe me something in life. That's a taker. Don't you owe me? I've given a lot of things to you. I've done so many things for you. Now, when are you doing something for me? That's not being a receiver in the sense of the spirit of loving kindness. So we want to learn to be givers and to receive with loving kindness and to receive with great gratitude. No matter what is given to you, I really want to highlight it. Take it. No matter what somebody gives you, take it. Know that you can give it away too. And let me just tell you this, that if you learn to take a lot of stuff that's been given to you, you'll be in abundance and have a lot of stuff to give away. But it's those people like, I always say, no, I don't need that. No, I don't want that. And then I have nothing to give away to share with somebody else. So, it's really important. Most recently, someone gave a good friend of mine some hand sanitizers. And he said, oh, I don't need this. I've got plenty of hand sanitizers. I've got way too much. And I pulled him aside and said, shh, take it. Know that wherever you're going down the road, you may be able to share that hand sanitizer with a homeless person, someone else in need, or offer it as a gift to a new neighbor or somebody that you may meet. You can pass it on. And isn't it wonderful to have things to pass on to somebody else? So be a receiver. And be a receiver with a heart of great appreciation. And most of all, receive not so much the gift, but receive the energy that's coming from the giver, of consciousness of you, awareness of you, of a desire to do something kind for you. So receive in that energy. Now, what would happen if we all pledged to perform 3 acts of kindness every day? Wow. Can you imagine what this world would be like? Let's just say everybody in Atlanta chose to do 3 acts of kindness just in one day. Can you imagine the energy going on of love and care and compassion and generosity that's just flowing through this city? Well, it would be just amazing. It would be transformational. So if you want to begin to transform your world, one of the greatest traits in the evolution of the soul is loving kindness. Doing something with loving kindness every single day is going to be so transformational for you. We walk after God, like God, by imitating God. And God's deeds of loving kindness are then found in our own lives. God's deeds of loving kindness are being demonstrated through us because we become the hands, the feet, the very voice of the divine. We become the expression of God in all ways. So when we are walking after God, meaning that we are being like God, when we are imitating God in all things, what happens is loving kindness should be a natural trait of the day-to-day journey. Now, sometimes we have to consider some things like, is there a resistance in our life of doing loving kindness? And so here the author is offering some scenarios for us and asking us, how do you respond to these kind of situations? Maybe there's someone who's in need of clothing. And, particularly we here at City of Light work with the homeless community. And so many of them are looking for some fresh, clean clothing. And I'm so appreciative of the many people from Metro Atlanta and across the United States that have donated or supported in many different ways the wonderful work of clothing those in need. But how about you? You may say, well, they need to get their own stuff. I can't believe it. They're asking for me to share with them a coat or whatever. I've only got, 25 coats in my closet, and, I need to wear them all through the season. And they're like, well, wait a minute. Okay, do you see? Sometimes we have to look and say, are we really willing to share and to assist whenever we see a need? And I'm going to tell you this. I'm sure each and every one of us have a lot of stuff in our closets that we're not using, that we could look at thinning down the closet and saying, these are things that I really wear. And there are things that I keep thinking I'll wear when I lose 15 pounds. That ain't going to happen. A lot of people think it's, that's going to happen. Or this is what I'll wear. These are my fat jeans and these are my skinny jeans and these are the jeans I can wear right now. So how about we stick with those kind of things? And the problem is you've been holding on to those skinny jeans or those fat jeans so long, they're out of style anyway. So, you could share them. You could give them away. The real question is, how do we respond? What's the first energy that comes to us? This first attitude that's rising up when we see someone in need? Is it like, well, I'm too busy. I can't help you. How about visiting the sick? Are you willing to offer care and companionship to those who are not feeling whole? This is a very strong Jewish trait of compassion. Yet it's found throughout Scripture, the importance of what we do to care for those who are sick and to be there for those who may need this wonderful touch of loving kindness. So are we there to say, that someone's sick, I don't really, want to reach out to them, I don't want to be around them, I don't like to be around sick people. What is our response? How about comforting the bereaved? Being there for someone who has lost a loved one. Let me tell you this. As a pastor for 42 years in ministry, I found that the greatest gift we can be is a presence towards those who have lost a loved one or a beloved, a dog, a cat, and a pet. Just being a presence of love. You don't have to say anything. People say, I'm not really good at funerals or memorials or being around those who have lost a loved one or experiencing some sort of loss because I don't know what to say. And I always feel like I'm going to say the wrong thing. Well, don't say anything. You don't need to. Because what you need to do is just be a presence and allow that person to vent in their grieving process. Allow that person to speak, and you just need to listen and be there as a presence. One of the great things that we can do in loving kindness is just be there for one another. Not having to say anything, but just be there as a presence to help one another. I have to say that currently I'm working with a young man who had just lost his partner, who had been in of a more mature age, and he was a young man who had never experienced someone close to him passing away in his life. This was all new. So he had not experienced the energy and the feeling of grieving. He didn't really understand what this was all about. What's this feeling, this burden? And people around him all try to say, get over it, move on, you need to work through it, whatever. But what's really important is just, I found, being there for him and being just a listening ear. So he calls and just vents. And I'm going, And that's all I need to say, to acknowledge, to say, I heard you, I'm listening. And as we go through the grieving process is a venting process. So being there for those who are in need of comfort, and that comfort is simply maybe even a hug, maybe just a presence or a listening ear. How do you feel about burying the dead? Now, in the Jewish tradition, caring for the body of the deceased is really important. Now, in Western traditions, we may feel a little different about it, but it may be about just what have we done to honor the deceased, to honor the body. And in Jewish tradition, many people think, how important it is that you take care of the body, embalming the body, or whatever it may be. In today's world, we're also interested in cremation. So really the question that we're asking ourselves in the burying of the body is, have you sort of completed the unfinished business? And that might be the more metaphorical question we have to ask ourselves is, are we involved in loving kindness enough that when someone passes, have we wrapped up all the unfinished business? Do we have something that is still in existence that needs to be buried or released? And in loving kindness, these can be some of the great things that we can do. Offering loving kindness to the deceased family, releasing any kind of animosity, unforgiveness, or anger, or resentment, or hurt, and building bridges in a new way. This can be acts of loving kindness. Now we look at Matthew chapter 25, verse 36, which says, I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. You see, this passage is talking about loving kindness and how it's been expressed in our world. We're called to care for the least of these, for those who are going through challenges in life, and to be a presence. Because life is not about every man for himself. If I'm only for myself, what am I? And unfortunately, our world today, there's a lot of thought process saying, wait a minute, it's me first, it's my country first, it's my world, it's all about us first, and not thinking about sharing or operating in a greater context of the whole planetary community, working together and collaborating. So if life is not about every man for himself, it's not about you for yourself. And a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, I got mine, you get yours. I don't care about it. It's all about me and how I've gotten mine, and I worked through the struggles and I did all this. Now you find your own pathway to get there. Let me tell you this, one thing I saw that was so beautiful was in the village life living in Kenya, East Africa. And in Kenya, all young people have to pay school fees. So the public school system is supported by parents paying dues or fees to support the school system. The government is kind of limited in that area with financial assistance, so every student pays to go to school. Well, many families don't have the money for their children to go to school. So what happens is they invest in the eldest child first and foremost, and send that eldest child through the school. And then that eldest child has a responsibility to help fund the second child through the school. And then the second and the first child work with the third child. And on goes the list until the whole family has completed their education process. You see, it's not just about me and I got mine. You find your own way. But it's a sense of collaboration to say, I have found mine and I received my blessings, but I'm also going to do everything I can to make sure that you have your blessings as well. I'm going to work in a sense of caring and loving kindness to make the world work for everyone, not just a few. So if I'm only for myself, what am I? Self-centered. And here's the challenge we face when we become an individual who's self-centered, a community that's self-centered, a nation that's self-centered. We shut ourselves off from this wonderful exchange of sharing and offering resources and building together in community. I can't emphasize enough the spiritual work of working in oneness, meaning that we as a world are all one. So it's not just about me, but it's about the world that I live in as well. So as I work hard to be a tide that raises all boats together, there's great success. But if one boat is raised and the other is sunk, there's not success. So what we have to learn is to release any kind of self-centeredness or ego that's just focusing on ourselves, but realizing that the loving kindness, the soul trait that is one of the most valuable in our world, is that of care and compassion for the world around us as well. And
this is kind of off the track, but not. How, in the Jewish culture and in Jewish life, how do the children handle it? I mean, do they go to special school, or do they have Sunday school, or how are they taught this is what Musar is and this is what we are, or?
Well,
in the Torah,
yes, there are Hebrew schools that the children will go to learn Hebrew, to learn the background of each word and the meaning behind each word, as we're learning the word chesed, meaning loving kindness, and how that word was formed. And so as they learn the Hebrew, they're learning all these values. Now, I can't say that every Hebrew student is also learning the spirit of Musar, because there are some religious sects that are more focused on the Musar tradition than others are. Just as in Christianity, there are some denominations that would raise children up with a stronger focus on compassionate values than others might. So, it's a wonderful teaching. And I think it's something that should be required in all of our family life, that we teach good ethics. We teach how to be a good person. Instill these within our children and to raise up a better world for us. Now let's move on to our next chapter, which is called Responsibility. And the opening statement says, I am your guarantor, you are my guarantor. We are in a community with one another, so we're called to be responsible. What does this really mean to be responsible? Because responsibility requires that we begin to think of the after effect, the after outcome of our actions. So beginning to take responsibility begins by saying, let me think, if I do A, B, or C, what's the outcome? What's the after effect? What happens after I do this? Ooh, maybe that's not a good choice. So as example, being a responsible driver, you might ask yourself, what would happen if I go speeding 100 miles down the other, swerving through traffic? What might be the after? Well, I might create accidents. Oh, okay. So learning to be responsible as a driver would mean maybe that's not a good thing, and I'll make responsible choices. So we must understand that every thought, every word, and every deed has an after. What comes after? What's the outcome? So we need to be very wise in foreseeing, looking to say, is this a good choice? Should I do this? I want to act from responsibility. David Carter, you have a question.
Okay, so every deed has an after. That's pretty much like saying every cause has an effect, every effect has a cause. Okay.
Exactly.
So under responsibility, let's take the vaccines for the COVID-19 virus. So it was on the news reported that progressive countries like the United States and other countries with money had enough vaccine to vaccinate their populations 3 times over. And that poor countries cannot afford the vaccine. And maybe they will get it in 2021, 2022. And I'm thinking, okay, so more lives are going to be lost in that great span of time, but these poor countries don't have access to the vaccine because they can't afford it. So then the responsibility is on countries like the United States to provide financial support to the poorer countries. But
Well,
if we don't do that, then what's the after is not gonna, it will affect them, it's gonna affect us too. It's gonna come back on us.
exactly. I agree with you 100%. So the illustration is if the United States has purchased enough of the vaccine to vaccinate everyone 3 times over, wow, that's an abundance. When there are poor countries that don't have access to anything and can't afford it. Yet what we're going to find is the world still has COVID-19. And as the world travels, that COVID-19 that hasn't been addressed in those poor countries is going to be spreading constantly through it. And we're not going to be working to eradicate it unless we work on a global context and we work together. So this is true for anything, not just a virus. It's how we live in the world. By allowing certain countries to just dwell in poverty, it affects the whole globe. One of the things that we're looking at is, again, in Brazil, the destruction of the rainforest, which the rainforest provides so much fresh oxygen and cleaning the planet. The Amazon rainforest is an immense tool for making sure that we have clean air in the world. But because there's poverty in Brazil and no one wants to care or help, what are the farmers doing but cutting down the trees and selling the trees? So what's happening is the whole globe is being impacted by the poverty that we're seeing in Brazil that no one wants to help out with. Yet we have immense wealth in countries who say, we have so many billionaires, and I don't know what the next thing level up is, and up and rising because there's so much wealth, yet it's not being shared. And it's not being shared in a way that offers help to make the globe, the whole global community, work well in conjunction with each other. So what happens is when we ignore and we're not responsible, we're not offering loving kindness, we're not offering in the spirit of sharing and generosity with others, there's going to be pockets that are going to impact the rest of the globe. And so we want to be working in conjunction with one another, living from a global community. How important that is. Now, unfortunately, we have had a rise in thinking, and it's America first. It's us first and everybody else last, rather than working to understand that there is plenty in this world. And if we all share together, we all rise to the top. And we'll do it together versus one nation suppressing or oppressing another. So this is, again, just good spiritual ethics. This is just common sense, folks. That we want to live from this perspective of being responsible for the after, whatever's going to impact our world, because we bear responsibility then for all of our actions in life. And we think, wait a minute, so when I share that gossip, what's the after effect? Did I hurt someone? Did I hurt myself? Did the words that I say, were they harmful and negative energy putting out? That's cycling out through the world. What's the after? So I need to be responsible about the words that I choose and the things that I say. So responsibility really begins from a sense of, let me look at what the outcome is going to be of the choices that I'm making in life. And we have to understand that the very context of this teaching asks the question, who is wise? The wise one is one who sees that is born. And what that phrase is saying metaphorically is, who is wise? It's the one who sees the outcome, who looks and says, wait a minute, if I choose this, what is the outcome? That's the true essence of wisdom. So if I choose to drive down the road speeding and breaking the law, and what's the outcome? Will I bring harm to others? The wise person goes, oh, I foresee the outcome, and I'm going to be responsible and make appropriate changes. So we have to look to say, how does everything that we do impact one another? I can't emphasize this enough because we live in a community. So perfect example of this is I live in a subdivision. It's a subdivision that's one way in and it's the only way out. So it's not a lot of traffic driving through, but it creates its own community of about 82 different homes. In this subdivision, we all realize that this subdivision has a name and has its own entity. but yet we live in a sense of community. But there's people who say, well, I don't care about community. You live in your house, I live in mine. So if I let my house run down, if I don't take care of my yard, if I don't mow the lawn, if I let weeds just come, it's all right, it's just me. But people aren't thinking about the outcome. So what happens is everyone's home value depreciates. Several value of these homes looks far less than what they're asking, because look at how run down they are. Look at how poorly kept they are. Look at about the neighbors, and I don't know if I want to go or live there. So the sale of the home is hindered, as well as the price goes down to find buyers who are willing to put up with all of that. And so what happens is we are impacting the whole subdivision because we don't work together. So people are waking up to, do you realize you live in a community and you need to be responsible for the after, for the outcome of how you choose to live. And people are like, well, I don't care about anybody else. I just live by myself. I really encourage people who have that attitude, just go out in the country and find a plot of land, a good 10 miles away from anybody else, and live that life if that's what you so choose. But you've chosen to live in a community, in a subdivision, where there are others. And how you live impacts everybody else. And we have to work together to raise up the shall we say, the value of everybody's home in this subdivision. So they have equity rising up, and their investments in their homes pays off. This is where, again, it's calling for us to live responsibly. Are we living responsibly? Now, when we are able to really foresee the future and see the outcome of our actions, this begins to rise and elevate the spirit of great wisdom into our lives. When we are aware of the damages that we might cause in the world by our actions, we're now moving into a level of greater wisdom. Because we're really saying, what are my actions? What are they going to bring about? What are the consequences? So even in our world today of environmental care, we're finding a lot of people like, I don't care. I mean, I'll throw my trash out the window. It doesn't really matter. I don't care because it's about me, and I don't care how it impacts the rest of the world. So we have a lot of plastic products. People, I don't care, I'll just buy excessive plastic products. Yet we're looking at our oceans that are filled with all these plastic bottles that are not being recycled or not being cared for. We've got trash within our oceans that are now harming our aquatic life. We're hindering and making the waters less pure and beautiful and rich and all these kind of things. And we're impacting our world collectively with an attitude that, hey, it's just all about me, and I haven't really thought about the damages of what my life might bring. But when we take responsibility for the consequences of damaging actions, we really do something that's wonderful. We preserve civil peace, and we really keep relationships harmonious. So when we think about what are my actions in this world, so we have a lot of governments in our world today that I don't care about anybody else, I'll do what I want to do. And so the peace in the world is disturbed by their actions of invading territories or attacking people or escalating nuclear weapons, and on goes the list of things that are just removing any kind of harmony because they're not thinking about the outcome of their actions and taking responsibility in a global context. So what we want to understand is there's one planet and we all live on it together. There's one Earth. Anybody have their own Earth? Anybody here? You got your own planet maybe you haven't told us about, that you're jet setting back and forth in, coming to class or arriving to be, no, okay, nobody's got their own planet, okay? Every one of us lives on the same planet. We've got one. There's only one. So there's only one Earth, and how do we take care of Earth? We want to do it responsibly. We want to do this with great care and concern about our actions. And we know that science is telling us today that 95% of climate change is brought about by human action, by the choices we've made to pollute, by the selfish and greedy perspectives that we have about saying, hey, I don't care if my car pollutes and a lot of carbon dioxide into the world, and I don't care about recycling, and I don't care about dirty coal energy and Let's pollute the world. I don't care. Because it's not impacting me in my lifetime, but we're seeing over the course of the last 50 years, the change in the climate, that the planet is getting warmer. It's science. It's not politics. It's truth and science, proven over and over again. So it's us beginning to say, wait a minute, maybe we need to be responsible for our actions and the damage it's causing. And even though we feel like, well, it doesn't bother me, what about our children and our grandchildren? And what about the countries nearby and the people that live in other areas around the world as well, and how it's seen? So foresee the mess and take responsibility before it happens, so you won't have to clean up the mess afterwards. Now, isn't that pretty amazing? If we began to see, wait a minute, how will the impact of this project or what I'm doing or my actions or my deeds or my words, how will it create a mess that I got to clean up later on? Well, how about we don't create the mess and we don't have to clean it up later on? Well, that sounds intelligent, doesn't it? Well, that would be the spirit of responsibility. Let me tell you this, that in our spiritual life, we're rewarded in life and the eternal life for our actions. We're rewarded in our physical life and rewarded truly throughout all eternity for our actions of being responsible. And we're called to bear one another's burdens. This is all about caring for one another. And this is, this very essence of God. I love this beautiful scriptures. Cast your very burdens upon me, for I care for you. Okay, if we're called to emulate, imitate, demonstrate God, to be the expression of God, then we would say to one another, cast your cares upon me because I care about you. I care about you. I care enough to be responsible. I care enough to be living and walking and living, not about my ego alone, but for seeing the greater good and how it affects everyone. So the author again closes this chapter with the statement, if I am not for myself, who will be? That's one side. And the other is, but if I'm only for myself, what am I? And the answer is, I'm ego. I'm self. I'm self-centered. The more we try to take on supporting of others, well, what's going to happen in our life is the ego is going to protest. And we've got a lot of people where ego is highlighted, self-focused, and it's all about me, me, me kind of world that we're living in. So when people say, well, I don't care about you, my ego is protesting and saying, you get your own. You take care of your own self. It's about your problem, not mine. Don't need to be concerned about you. Why would I share with you when I've got this and that and so on? So what happens is the wealthy and those have say, in the fields of education would say, I can afford to send my children to a wonderful, wealthy private school. And why should I fund public school? You people, you got to figure out your own way to get the money to go to an elite private school. Where public school is there, and public school then is being deprived of funding and support by people who they're living out their ego and saying, I don't want to pay taxes. I don't want to support this. I don't want to give. I don't want to share because it's about other people and I don't know these people and I don't care about these people because all I care about is me. And I've got the means and I'll take care of my children and they'll go to an elite school and I'll pay for it because I can. And the others, well, they got to find their own way. How do we find a balance between this that says we help everyone find their own way? We share responsibly. We give and providing means for people to find their own way, to find their pathway too. So we have to provide for good education in our public schools, through our taxes, through generous giving and support so that everyone rises together and everyone learns how to find their own pathway together. Because some people say, well, I don't want to support people who are just lazy and don't do anything. But in human nature, most people are just struggling because they don't see a pathway. And what we can give, the greatest gift we can give, is a pathway for everyone to succeed, for everyone to find the path. And how important this is in the ethics of good life and good living for us as a nation and for individuals.
Politically, it's never been so clear to me as now, watching with the runoff and the advertisements on TV, they are now name calling. And that basically is bullying. And what would one person do if somebody turned around and said to them, no, you're a liar. You're calling me a liar. You're a liar. You know, and we're teaching our children that. We're teaching the people that aren't really thinking about it too much how to be bullies. But it's astounding to me.
Right.
You know, and I can't respect anyone that's doing that.
And we live in a culture where we feel like the best bully wins because everyone needs to be a bully. That's the crazy thinking.
Yeah.
Because it's so fear-based. What we're doing in our world today is propagating. How do we motivate people? But through fear. Well, where does that come from? Well, that's been the origins of the fundamentalist Christian tradition. Fear. How do I get you to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior? I'll preach fear. You're going to burn in hell for all eternity. You're going to be left behind if Jesus comes in the clouds. You will suffer immense pain, and it will be pain that will never come to an end. And you will endure this terrible removal from society of emptiness and aloneness throughout all of eternity of your life. Are you now afraid? Yes. So more people are saying, well, I'll come to church because I want to get my get out of hell card. That's what I want more than anything else. I don't really care about God. I just want to know that I am addressing my fear of living in eternity of hell and punishment. I want to address that more than I really care about living and expressing the divine and understanding what God is all about and God's love and how to live it out in my life. So down through the years, this education of how do we work with society best, we work with them through fear rather than through love. And that's the crazy thing that's been a root of everything we see. Well, wow, I see fear manipulates far better. Well, then let's manipulate society by just talking fear, fear, fear. So every ad is full of, be afraid of this. If you vote for this candidate, this is what you need to be afraid of. This is what fear will motivate you. Rather than saying, here's the outcome if you vote for me. You know, here's the good.
Right.
That's what it should be. Steve, you had a question.
So would you say that if those that use fear, like fear of hell, as a starting point for their spiritual growth, is that at the same time the obstacle to spiritual growth?
Definitely. What happens is, if we are, let's just say you're dating someone, and on your first date, they hold a gun to your head, said, you're going to love me, or I'll blow your brains out. What kind of love do you have? You say, yes, I will love you. Okay, yeah, I love you. Yeah, of course I love you. Because they're afraid about the outcome of their life being taken, of them being murdered, right? So does that person really love that person who holds the gun that they're dating? No, they don't love that person. They're expressing a love that's phony and fake, but it's based in fear. So the same as we come to a church that says, that is fear-based in their preaching and saying, you're going to burn in hell if you don't accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. Do you want to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Yeah, I don't want to burn in hell. So whoever this Jesus is, I want to accept him because I don't want to burn in hell. So the basis then of that relationship is not founded or foundational in the spirit of true love. Now, how about we have a love-based church that's preaching the goodness of God, the love and grace and an amazing spirit of infinite possibilities of the God working in and through our lives? Then you're saying, well, wow, I want to come and experience that kind of God in my life. And because it's based on a love for the love of God, not based in a fear of what God may do to us in punishment and in judgment. So a fear-based approach to God is actually a spiritual hindrance because we're constantly living or coming to God from a fear-based approach. So everything we do out of fear rather than out of incredible love. Love for wanting to experience more of the divine. A love for wanting to really experience more of that which we've already discovered and experienced through God's divine love working in our lives. Great questions. Now let's move on. Our next chapter is all about trust. And I think this is really great that we can just follow through with each one of these beautiful traits that go hand in hand with one another. Now, a person who tries to practice trust in God while leaving themselves a backup plan is like a person who tries to learn to swim but insists on keeping their foot on the ground. You know, now can you imagine that? Can you see that person out in maybe a pool with a swimming instructor saying swim, but you want to keep your feet on the ground? You realize that you have to trust by letting your feet off the bottom of the pool to be able to swim across the top of the water, right? We have to realize that. So when you find a person who says, I trust in God, but I got plan B, that's a person who's really not fully trusting in God, is it? They still got their foot on the ground. They're saying, I'd like to trust, but I don't give 100% trust. 100% trust sounds very scary, doesn't it? But that's the energy of trust, is saying, I release everything else. I don't hold on to anything else. I'm in complete trust in this. Person who's fallen over the cliff, hanging on by their knuckles to the very edge, holding and holding, and someone reaches out and says, take my hand. Oh, I can't just, how do I know? That's complete trust. I need to release the grip I have to reach out to take the hand of the person who's there to assist me, right? Requires complete trust. Trust that says, I just believe 100% that in releasing this, I'm reaching out for the better, rather than trying to hold on to the cliff and not being able to reach out for the person's assistance or hand, you know? So years ago, great illustration for me in my life has been learning to trust through zip lining. Yes, you know, in Costa Rica, I had the opportunity to go zip lining across big canyons and jungle terrain. And you're looking at this little cable and you're looking at this little connection that's holding and supporting you as you zip across these cables of these huge canyons, the extent of a football field. And I'm going, this is trust that says I fully believe that that cable is going to support me and hold me, and that the energy going across will bring me across to the other side. You have to trust 100%, because I can't stand on the base and the guy try to push me, go, go, go on the, if I'm not really trusting. So I'm never going to cross the canyon on the zip line if I don't trust completely and let go of my feet anchored to the starting base and to release and move and float across. It's trust. Trust is 100% release of all else and putting all energy in the belief. Because this is what Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 is saying all along. Trust with all your heart, not with part of your heart, not with a little bit of your heart. That's not trust. Trust with all your heart. And how do we do that? Because the next aspect of that passage says, lean not on your own understanding. So that means let go of your foot on the ground if you're learning to swim. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Trust in this completely. Dr. David Carter has a question.
So that means contingency plans are in essence saying you don't trust?
Very true, because if you're really believing for something, then plan B, and again, we live in a world that says, good wisdom says plan A, and if that doesn't work out, how about plan B? But that's living from the physical in our world, okay? So complete trust in the spiritual would say, I don't need a plan B. I got plan A, and I walk and live in plan A 100%.
So plan B cancels out plan A.
Definitely. Plan B cancels out plan A. Wonderful. I love this example from the author Brings of teaching people to trust. He would take students, send them 200 miles away from their homeland or their home place, and offer them a one-way train ticket with the instructions, you've got to find your own way back. You've got to learn to trust. Well, they had to learn to trust and not fear and say, okay, here we go. We're being sent 200 miles away on a one-way ticket, and how are we going to get the funds, and how are we going to make our way back? That's all about trust. So what are we doing to learn the power of trusting? Well, we need to just launch out on plan A and forget plan B. David, and then we'll go to Ann.
Okay. So in the physical world, in your job or whatever, a lot of jobs have contingency plans.
Right.
And that's how they operate. You know, because if this doesn't work or if something happens, we go to plan B or plan C. And to me, one of the examples that I thought was startling is when I worked in the legal system, I worked at the courthouse, there was this plan B. If anything happens, we got people on the roof to protect the judges, and the chief judge takes the black bag with him that has all of the laws and rules and stuff, for the county and state in it. So you work in an environment where you are schooled and versed in the contingency plan.
Right.
So you have that aspect of your life, and you have the spiritual aspect of your life as well. But sometimes there can be a conflict if you don't build up the spiritual aspect, because you have to be able to still work and live in the physical world, but you yourself know that the plan A, whether it's in your job or in your home, you're going to stick with plan A.
So isn't it true that if you only have plan A and no B, C, or D, the only thing you have to work through is plan A?
Yeah.
But if you do have plan A and plan B and C, well, why would you put all your energy in A when you know B and C could be your backup? So what happens if you only work with one plan, one idea, one concept, it's going to be you're putting 100% energy into it for its success. It's like people who say, we're getting married. We're going to share our vows of commitment till death do us part. But we've got a plan B, and that's a prenuptial that says if we divorce, and when that divorce happens, we are certainly going to be able to separate very easily and wonderfully and comfortably. So what happened there? There's a plan A and a plan B. And plan A is now weakened because the thought is there is a plan B and we can easily divorce. We can easily separate. So the energy around working a relationship and working as a committed couple, working with each other is now diminished because there is also a plan B. So I really encourage people to say, if you plan to get married, do you plan to get married for life, or do you plan to just get married for a season? Because if that's the case, then highly get a plan B. But if you're really making a commitment for life, then you don't need a plan B because it's going to be for life. And I'll tell you this, years ago, there were lots of couples who made it 75, 80 years together because they only had plan A. They didn't have plan B. They learned how to work through all of the challenges to make sure that it worked. Now, there are still circumstances for divorce. We understand that. But we're looking at for those who are working to say, how do we make a marriage work? And of course, we could discuss this for at no end. That means it needs to be two people all committed to plan A. Not one person with a plan B mindset and the other with only a plan A. It's a two-party thing. So both people have got to say, I'm committed to one plan, and that is marriage. And I'm committed to make it work no matter what happens. And we will find a way to make it work because that's the commitment. And so it is in everything in life. When you're looking for any kind of action plan in life, if you have multiple plans, you'll divide your energy between how do I work out A and how does B going to happen if A doesn't work out, and how do we invest in C if B doesn't happen? And before you know it, your energy is divided. But trusting with all your heart means that there is no divided trust or compartmented trust. It's all your heart is invested in plan A, and that's God. Okay? God is making a way. And I'm not going to live from any other plan than that God is making a way. So, it's kind of like the children of Israel standing at the edge of the Red Sea with the Pharaoh's army marching behind them. What was it? You got one plan. Plan A, trust in the Lord. Okay? They're like, well, okay, if the waters don't part, what do we do? How fast can we build some pontoons? If the waters don't part, is there a scuba diving troop that at least will get some of us who could get across the water? Is there a plan where maybe we, what's plan C? Do we just fight with the Pharaoh and lose our lives? Or no, we invest in plan A, and plan A says, move out to the waters. And what did they do? They stepped into the waters, and the waters began to part for them because they invested all of their energy in plan A. Even when it looked like, I don't know how it's going to work, but that's what trust is. Trust says you don't need to know how it works, you just trust in it, right? And we'd like to say, wait a minute, before I trust in it, I need to know everything, every aspect, every step of the pathway, everything that God's going to do. Here's trusting God to guide us. And that may be the sense we're in the world where we don't see everything through the fog of life. We don't see it clearly, but we begin to move knowing that as we step forward, God is leading, guiding, and making a way when there seems to be no way. And
So how do you look at it if you are in a leadership role? How do you, and you are leading or responsible, say, to a committee of 5 or 6 very, very different people at different learning levels and abilities and all that. How do you build trust in your staff? And I say one answer to that would be being responsible, and that would help build trust in you through your people. But I don't know. I guess being in the moment. I mean, how would you be a leader and not have a plan B?
how would you be?
Saying?
Because you talk to your team saying, I believe in plan A. Okay? And I have a passion for plan A. And I'm responsible about the outcome of plan A and thought it through, and it's a good plan. So, first of all, if you're going to really get your team to trust you and your leadership ability, you have to have sort of thought through and being responsible about whatever plan you're presenting, okay?
Right.
So it's got to be, this makes sense, and this is rationale. It says, okay, this is a good deal. And then you must invest all of your passion into plan A, or what you're presenting to your team. Here's the pathway, and here's why this pathway is good. And we're going to work together to accomplish this pathway. And the team will then see through experience your leadership that you have led them into the best pathway because you've thought it through and you've been responsible with the outcome. And you have invested such energy and passion in that plan. And, here's the thing. The Bible says without a vision, people perish. We need a vision around our plan A. And because here's the problem with a plan A and a plan B and a plan C, a lot of us are perishing because we're thinking, well, I don't need to work so hard with plan A because we've got plan B to fall on. And I don't even really need to work so hard on plan B because I got C to fall on. So we would really put all of our energy in if we really focus just on one plan. C.
Some would try and present the argument, would you ever take a cruise across the Atlantic if the ship didn't have lifeboats or life preservers?
Well, it would be all your faith, because let me tell you, a lot of people have crossed the ocean on ships that didn't have life preservers and didn't have boats. But they believed in their ability to sail. I don't think Christopher Columbus had a lot of life preservers. I think some of the early sailors didn't necessarily have backup lifeboats for everyone in the crew. We look at some of these early sailing ships, they just believed in their ability to work through the storm, and they believed and trusted in their skills to be good sailors, and they believed that they could, make it through. And the power of our believing will accomplish a lot of great things. So, I think there's a lot of people who do step out. There's a sense of good wisdom and the outcome of being responsible. So I would also just couple that with saying maybe responsible about the outcome would be that if I was the owner of this ship, I would provide life preservers, just being responsible and looking at the outcome. But I'm also going to believe firmly in number 1, that we'll never use them and never need them because I believe in plan A. And I'm not saying, well, I don't need to put all energy in A because we've got life preservers. So if we sink, don't worry about it. Why put all of our energy in smooth sailing? So there's an iceberg in front of us. You know what? Don't worry about it. We got preservers, life preservers. We got backup boats. Who cares? Hit that iceberg. Go ahead, because we got plan B. Well, see, how about if you'll say, my focus is only plan A and there's an iceberg, stop the ship, turn it around, let's get away from the iceberg. Okay, David.
Okay, so you're saying that your plan A is a very thorough plan A.
Now that would be responsible person who selects a plan, a vision that's filled with responsibility for the outcome, that thinks what is the after, okay?
Okay, but how would you advise a person who came to you who was in business, and let's say they said, okay, so Monday morning when we sit around the table and have our briefing, I have to present my plan to the company executive officer. And part of what I'm required to do is to present a full vision, a full plan, and I'm also required to have a contingency. I'm a spiritual person, but in my business life, this is what's required of me. What would be your advice to them?
If someone like your employer says, I'm requiring you have a contingency, I would say, here it is, but I don't think we need it.
Okay, because I'm fully invested in
Exactly.
saying, hey, this is
And
thorough and it's...
if you sell it to your boss and to the others on the team, that this, I firmly believe, my vision is full on this, and I see the possibilities here, and I'm inviting you to step in and put your energy into this. We're going to work together as a team on one thing, okay? It's like a rowing team where everyone is rowing together, and we're inviting everyone to put the same amount of energy and to accomplish the goal to make sure that the boat arrives at the destination. Where there's some people say, well, wait a minute, plan B is what? You know, maybe someone will push us. Maybe we don't make the destination. I'm not going to row that hard. But when everyone sees the goal, they all row equally as hard. And if you've sold them with the vision and saying it is possible, then people will join with you in your passion, your faith, and your believing. That's a good salesman. So, you know, a salesman has to have the power of believing in what they're moving forward with. Okay? All right, great. So now let's continue on as we look at this, that every experience of fear or worry strikes you as simply being a signal, calling you to fan the inner sparks of your bitachon. Bitachon is the Hebrew word. Bitachon. Shon. It's bitachon. Is it? It's shon on the end. Bitachon. Bitachon really is this powerful sense of optimism and confidence based not on reason or experience, but what you know that God is good and he's the only one in charge, and therefore you have nothing to fear or fret. So it's this confidence. That's what trust is. Trust is based in a confidence. So every fear that's rising up within you is a signal to say, wait a minute, how's my level of trust? I must not be trusting with all my heart. Because if I'm trusting with all my heart, there's no fear. Okay? That's called fearless trust. Fearless energy that we're putting forward. I can't tell you how many times when I've just had such a sense of confidence and inner knowing that I've stepped out in great faith fearlessly. And I didn't entertain, though people around me, we want to speak words of fear and doubt and worry and stress. The confidence, the complete trust I had in the outcome is what really brought about and manifested the outcome that I anticipated. So we must respond in knowing that we need to raise our level of trust at all times. So if you're hearing little thoughts of fear, doubt, fret, worry, those are signals. I gotta hone the craft of trusting. I need to work on its trust with all my heart, not part of my heart, but all my heart. So everything I'm doing with such sense of confidence that it's going to actually accomplish this. So as example, in the zip lining, I stepped off the platform with complete trust, zipped across the canyon, the length of a football field, and arrived at the other end. Now, there were moments of worry and fear, but you dismissed that worry and fear and saying, I'm putting every ounce of energy into this ability to make it to the other end. And that trust is what brought me to the other end of the zip line, to the destination. So we really want to work on honing the craft of trusting in the Lord with all, not part, all, not a portion, all of our heart. How important it is we get that. Let's move on to our next chapter entitled Faith. Now, if you are intent on making the most of your life, well, here, listen to this. Faith will be on your spiritual curriculum. Okay? If you really want to make the most of your life, faith is going to be on your spiritual curriculum. You're going to say, I need to work on my faith. Because faith is something that is appreciated and understood only through experience. So if you're not practicing faith, you're not getting experience, right? And this is how you learn faith, is through experience. But there's a lot of people like, oh, I don't want to trust. I don't want to step out in faith. I don't want to step out in believing. It's risky. It's scary. So they don't have these experiences. So they're not building their faith. So what are you doing that now builds your faith every single day? That you have an experience with faith. Because it is the foundation of being whole and complete. That's what faith is. For without faith, what happens is wholeness or our completeness slips away from us. The ability to believe, the ability to be in great faith and trust and confidence, the ability to trust are all coupled into this. So what happens is faith is not just being about a belief. Get this. It's about a knowledge and understanding. But how do you get this knowledge and understanding? By experience. So this is why it's really important. How are you practicing your faith? So I have challenged you many times to say, what are you believing for today? How about everyone believe that we did this experience? We believe for a feather. We're going to see a feather. Well, based on that experience, many of you begin to manifest a feather. Okay, so that was a simple task. So you have an experience that says, I know that as I believed and began to look for it and trust, and I know that as I began to anticipate, it was so I found the feather. Okay? We had another class where we asked everyone to look for a rose, that today you will see a rose. A rose will be manifested some way in your life. When you began to exercise that faith, you had an experience. An experience is, I know this works. Okay? So every day you have to say, well, how am I putting faith into work? That I have experience that says, based on this experience, I understand and I have a greater knowledge. Because a lot of people say, teach me faith. I can't teach you faith. Faith will come from practicing. I can't teach you to play the piano. Playing the piano and the skill of playing the piano will only come through practice. You could sit in a room and I could tell you all about playing the piano. I could tell you about music and notes and how you need to put your fingers on the keys. But if you're never doing it and you're never practicing, you're not learning the skill of playing the piano yourself. Okay? So it's the same with faith. Unless you practice it, you're never going to have an understanding or the experience you need to build on to grow it. So faith is not about a belief, but a knowledge and an understanding. And now let me tell you this. Everyone has faith, but some people, they actually know it. Some people know it. Every one of you have faith, but some people know it. And this is where, again, how do you know it? Through experience. You will know the faith. You will build your faith. You will strengthen your faith. You'll have greater understanding of your faith if you begin to practice it. So faith is not that you believe in God, but rather you know where to look to find God. Now that really describes it. Because, it's a lot of people say, well, I know God's out there and I know God's somewhere out there in the universe and I know God is looking down on me and I know that God cares and I know, wait. But those people who say, I know where to find God, and that's within. And I go within me and I discover the divine presence that's molding and shaping and making me and unfolding and building me. I know where to find God and how to really ignite that presence of the divine in my life. So experience is the gateway to faith. Experience it. So start working it, start expressing it, start practicing it. I love this closing thought that the author offers us is, the body needs air, and what is the air of the soul? Faith. Faith is the air of the soul. Breathe some life into your soul by stepping out in faith and believing for something. Let me tell you this. As a child, you practiced great faith. Faith in your feet and your legs. Faith in your ability to pull yourself up. You were good at faith at age 1.5 or 1, whenever you started to learn to walk for each one. You learn to believe in your ability to rise yourself up and sustain yourself. And you learn, even when you fell, how to pick yourself up. So I can't emphasize this enough, how important it is that you understand that you have faith. And if you fall, if you falter, if you make a mistake, don't worry about it. It's all about the experience of learning how to trust 100%, how to build this sense of knowing, and how to really breathe in fresh air into the soul through the power of faith. Well, that concludes our today's study, and thank you so much for being with us. So we are going to look forward to your takeaway. And we're going to ask what really spoke to you. So let me begin with Anne. Can you tell us what your takeaway is from today's class? What really spoke to you? And then we'll go to Brenda real quickly. And what's your takeaway? And while they are sharing their takeaway, those of you who are joining us through live streaming, if you'd be so kind as to type in, what's your takeaway? What did you receive from today's discussion? What spoke to you? Anne.
I think probably the biggest lesson out of today was the parallel between cause and effect in science of mind and new thought and unity that we've been learning through Emerson, and the fact that it's exactly a piece of Musar, that we have to look at what our actions are going to cause afterwards. So.
Beautiful. Cause and effect, being responsible. Thank you. Brenda, what's your takeaway?
Responsibility requires that we begin to think of the after of our actions.
Thinking of the after of our actions. Beautiful.
So for seeing this, we take responsibility before it happens so that we won't have to clean it up after.
Great. Let's clean up on aisle 4 if we begin to think, how do I work on aisle 4 so I don't make a mess? Great. Excellent. All right, let's go to Steve. What's your takeaway?
You have people that say, I have a right. These are my rights. I have a right. Rights without wisdom, rights without even a sense of responsibility can be destructive. Now, that is not an argument for, let's do away with rights. I'm not talking about doing away with rights. What I'm saying is, if you fight for rights, you also have to fight for responsibility. Because, an example would be guns. I have a right to own a gun.
Right.
But if you're right to own a gun and you don't take responsibility, and it could lead to somebody's death that didn't have to lead to somebody's death. And I'm not talking self-defense. I'm talking about a child finding the gun and it goes off and someone dies because of it, or somebody,
right.
You shoot somebody by accident, because you weren't being responsible. That's a right that is shown as being very destructive. And again, it's not the right that's the problem; it's the responsibility.
Correct.
And every right needs to come with an understanding that rights, in order to keep rights and properly, take the importance of rights, you have to have responsibility to go with it. They cannot be separate.
Beautiful. Excellent explanation. Wonderful. Dr. David Carter, what's your takeaway?
Faith is something that is appreciated and understood through experience.
Right. Let's put it to work, and we will appreciate it, understand it. It will grow and breathe more air into the soul as we practice it. Excellent. Great. Do we have takeaways from students?
No, none online, but I want to also add that you're constantly telling us to step out in faith and believe for something every day. And I think that's really important to remember.
Every day, let's practice that faith. Amen. So just believe for something small and start there, and then your experience builds that you can believe for greater things. So what are you putting forth where? The power of believing, the power of imagination, as we've talked in other classes through Neville Goddard's teaching. How are we putting this all to work? That this faith says, this is what I visualize, I believe, and I'm confident in it that it's bringing about, it's going to manifest. Dr. David Carter.
I began to put that into practice with something really small, and I started out with a parking space, like you suggested.
Right.
And it worked so well that after the fact, after I stopped focusing on it, focusing my energy on it, I realized now you believe you're going to have a parking space, and you manifested that every time you go somewhere you need to park.
Beautiful. Excellent. Well, if there's no other comments, then what we also want to do is invite you to share today in a donation to Emerson Institute for the wonderful class experience that you've engaged in. Great appreciation. Let's share some expressions of gratitude through the gifts that we share. And you can go to our website at www.cityoflightatlanta.com. And there at the website, you'll find a donate button, and you can offer your donation, your gifts to the Emerson Institute. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you so much for being with us today. And don't forget to pick up some products that support the Emerson Institute through Positive Outlet, our online store where you can find all kinds of amazing products supporting Emerson. Great gifts for Christmas, great gifts for other students, great gifts for your friends, and let them know even more so about Emerson Institute and its great value in our lives for spiritual enrichment. I'm Dr. Paul Gratz. I got to get that straight here. Who am I? Yeah, some days I wonder. I'm Reverend Paul Gratz here, and I am so delighted that you've joined us today. God bless you for being with us, and I look forward to seeing you next week.